Jennifer Mendyke here with your daily 60 seconds of biblical inspiration for your day. Today I'm going to read from James chapter 4, verse 7. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. You know, a lot of us have that second part down. We get that we should resist the devil. We should resist the enemy. But we forget that we first have to submit ourselves to God. It's really easy for us to start thinking, well, if I just resist him, then that'll be enough. I can resist the devil because I have God. But we forget that before we start resisting, we have to get close to God. We have to have his protection. You know, I think of, we have a little dog. And when my husband and I sit next to each other, if he sees any gap, any minute crack between us, then he wedges himself in between us and he squeezes in there, and then he sits between us and he makes that gap between us. The enemy's the same way. If he sees any wiggle room between you and God, he's going to try to weasel himself into that crack because his goal is to separate you from God. So if he can wiggle his way in there, whether it's by attacking you and making you rely on yourself for resistance, or whether it's letting you get comfortable with God and start drifting away, not having as good a prayer life, not having as much Bible reading. And pretty soon he's wiggling his way in there with other things that you need to get done. And oh, you just don't have time for it now. And pretty soon he's widened that gap between you and God. That's the enemy's entire goal. His goal isn't to come in and attack you and make you fear for yourself, because that'll turn you towards God. When you have the strong attacks coming and you know what's going on, you turn to God. But when he does these subtle things, remember that's how he attacked Eve in the garden, was with his subtlety. When you have these subtle things coming in, these things that they become distractions. They become, I'm just too busy. I don't have time today. Oh, there's just so much going on. That's the tool of the enemy. He's subtle. He's not going to come in and beat you over the head with this thing because he knows that turns you to God. The stronger he attacks, the more quickly we turn to God, because we know it's an attack from the enemy and we know the only way we can overcome it is with God. But when he comes in with time stealers, when he just wiggles his way in between you and God and just slowly starts widening that gap, that's when you're in danger. So remember, anytime you know that you need to resist the enemy, which is daily we must resist the enemy. Anytime you have to resist the enemy, you need to first submit yourself to God. Get close to God. Spend some time in prayer. Spend some time in reading the scriptures and become close to God, because then it's easy to resist because you're using God's willpower, not your own. When we try to use our own willpower, we're going to fail because we're not strong enough. But when we use the willpower that God gives us through the Spirit, then we can resist. And it's easy to resist because we're using God's Spirit to resist, not ourselves. So when you need to resist, daily you need to resist. First, you need to draw close to God. Submit yourself to God. Submit yourself to him. Go to him in prayer in the morning and say, Lord, I am your vessel today. Use me how you will. Use me how you will. I want to do your work today, Lord Jesus. I want to do your work today. Submit yourself to God. And then resisting the enemy is easy. And he's not going to find that wiggle room. He's not going to find that gap that he can exploit and get between you and God, because you've already closed the gap. You've sealed it. You've become this singularity with God. There's no gap. There's no gap for him to exploit. So go to prayer every morning. Go to God every morning in prayer. Seek him out every morning. And then the rest of the day is easier because you don't have to try to resist the enemy on your own. And you don't have to wait until you're attacked to seek God before you can resist. Just seek God first thing every morning. And then you can resist throughout the day. It makes it easier. So seek God. Don't let there be a gap. Keep the gaps closed. Have a wonderful day. God bless. Goodbye.